made their sacrifice now. Tell me what you think about equal rights for all, everywhere. Say what you think, what you think, what you think, what you think about justice. What you know, what you know, what you know, what you know about love. Why all the segregation, all are but one nation. Oh, let us unite as one. Let us unite as one. Tell me what you know about love. Tell me what you know about hate that keeps us separated. Tell me what you think about equal rights.
A pleasant good morning to our radio listeners here at home and abroad. Thank you for joining us this morning on our weekly program, Policing with You. I'm your host, Sergeant Matthew Maguire. And today our topic for discussion is school safety. And so I have with me in studio is the principal of the Virtuals High School, Mr. Thomas. I'll just let him say good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Miguel Thomas, principal of the Virtuals High School. Good morning.
Right, so at this time we want to engage you, the general public, in relation to our topic for today. And what we are going to do, we will have some interaction, we take a break, then we will come back and we will look at school safety protocols, student behavioral and mental health and communication. And then during that interaction, you, the listening audience, you can, if you care to weigh in, you can call. And once you call, we will take your call during the program. And so all students and educators have a right to interact, to attend schools that are safe and conducive to learning and achievement. Yet schools are experiencing increasingly frequent incidents that are having a devastating long-term impact on students in some cases, parents, educators, and also the community at large. School safety is a multifaceted issue which it has no one clear solution for each community. And so if I were to put a definition to it, I'll say school safety is defined as schools and school-related activities where students are safe from violence, bullying, and harassment, and the influence of substance use. Safe schools promote the protection of all students from violence, exposure to weapons and threats, theft, bullying, and harassment. The scale or use of illegal substances on school grounds and other emergencies. School safety is linked to improved student and school outcome, in particularly emotionally and physical safety in schools are related to academic performance. At the same time, students who are victims of physical or emotional harassment or who are involved in the sale or use of illegal substances on school grounds are at risk for poor performance and course failure, and ultimately to the large extent school dropouts. And so is from this backdrop we interact and we engage you, the listening audience, as to how you can weigh in on the issue. So Mr. Thomas, now tell us, the education institution are to identify and meet school safety needs. What are some of those needs that you think are important?
Well, Sergeant Maguire identified a number of important aspects of what school safety entails in your opening remarks, and as we look at school safety, we must first and foremost approach it as a multifaceted thing. We can't just look at school safety as one-dimensional. And so when you're looking at school safety, you are looking at things such as students' protection against fire. You have parking, plumbing issues. Those are all things that fall under school safety. You look at students mitigating school violence, violent acts rather. And so if you are looking at school needs or facets of school safety, then those are some of the things that you most definitely would want to look at. Something as simple as some might perceive as parking, you know, that could present a whole threat to student safety, not only students but also teachers and anyone who comes onto the school's premises. So all those things would be the needs of schools as it relates to safety.
Right. And so, as a principal, from your school perspective, what are some of the best practices that regarding school safety that you might identify and put in place?
If we were to lead from the needs that were previously identified, then you'll realize as an institution there are many things that we can do to respond to to implement our employ best practices rather. And so let's start with something that is common across all schools within St. Kitts and Nevis. You have school safety guards, security guards rather.
Right, yeah.
They are positioned at the gate, so they are generally the first sources
The point of contact, yeah.
between anyone external, be it a student just coming in, or parent, visitor, whoever. They are, unless someone intrudes on the perimeters of the school, but talking about the normal protocol, then you have those school personnel, and they are quite essential in the daily operations within any learning institution. In the vein of school safety or protocol, then you look at things such as searches. Those are important. As a school, you want to identify certain contrabands as it relates to the school's regulations that should not be prohibited on the school's premises. And so once students are found with some of those things, then you understand that there are certain responses that as school administrators you must go through, whether the items be confiscated, whether they be parent student teacher conferences, whether they be warnings and stuff like that, and all of those would feed into that. Then you want to look at clear communication between teachers to students to parents, and it's not a linear process, so it could be parent to student, student to teacher, XYZ.
Right.
And you want to communicate clear guidelines. And so your assembly sessions are quite essential. For instance, you always want to get at the heart of the matter, and mitigating these things are far better than trying to respond to them after they would have occurred. And so you want to sensitize children, you want to still instill in them certain values, respect for others, respect for human rights, and those things go a long way. Sometimes you hear the students saying, Mr. Thomas, remember you said XYZ? Mr. Who said XYZ? And you know, so those things are still important. You have the hidden curriculum, you have the sessions such as health and family life education, where all of those things are still integral parts of ensuring that schools are kept safe. And the last thing I would say on that in terms of the protocols, even as it relates to students learning and their interactions within the classroom, because each child, in your introduction you mentioned stuff such as bullying and ensuring that students are safe. And so as a classroom teacher, it is still imperative that you establish clear guidelines within your classroom so that students can understand the parameters in which they should operate in ensuring that everyone is kept safe.
Right. And so from the Vultures High School in particularly, I'm sure there might be experiences of increased incidents. How do you think, from a school safety standpoint, and school safety as a multifaceted issue, can be addressed with the community as part of the solution?
Well, you said it is possible that we might have an increase in violence or crime or whatever. That is not necessarily the case for us, thankfully. However, no school is devoid of any sort of incidences. There are unfavorable things that might surface within a school. And so our approach is to be an all-inclusive one. You want to engage the communities, engage the parents. There's an old adage that says it takes a village to raise a child. And so we still relish or bask or hold fast rather to those sayings. And so constant communication, again, we recognize that if there is, let's say there is an upsurge in a particular behavior that is unfavorable, then you realize that as a principal, I have a broadcast with parents. I would communicate certain things. Instead of waiting for a general PTA, for instance, or a conference, you can always call in persons, disseminate information via that, and then you realize that once parents are in receipt of certain messages, they too can now in turn have dialogues or conversations with their children. You recognize that when, again, back to the assemblies, it's important to teach children to respect those within their communities, those around them, anybody who you come in contact with. And so that, once that is done, then you recognize that persons, or you have a situation where persons from the outside, they would relay certain information. It's an all-inclusive effort. For instance, you have shops on the road, vendors, and if an incident occurs, let's say at the base of the school road or close to the bottom of the school road, we have a partnership where the shopkeeper, she can show us footages, as she has done in the past, to ensure that we can help to solve certain crime or problems within and around the school. And so it's an all-inclusive approach.
Right. Yeah, and that is true. And speaking about an all-inclusive approach, I'm sure that the school has a PTA.
Yes, it does.
Right. And so how can the Parents Teachers Association be used as a vehicle to promote school safety and the well-being of children?
PTAs, Parent Teachers Associations, are quite essential in the development and running of any academic institution. Oftentimes we have situations where PTAs are non-existent, they are dormant, or they are totally unfamiliar with the student's body. And so there's a disconnect. Now, recently we had a PTA, just last week, ironically, and we installed a new PTA executive. And the parents, they were quite enthusiastic about taking the roles, the necessary roles, and so that is something that we are getting back on our feet with, recognizing that the PTA is an integral part of the school. In the past, though, with the pre-existing PTA, there were instances where the members of the executive, they came to the school, they had conversations, and whether or not they are part of the PTA, you would have different persons coming to the school to have certain conversations with the students and to create that rapport between student and the PTA. And I think that is a good way to go.
Right.
That is a very good way to go, and you realize those PTA members in turn, along with other supportive parents, because we have many of those,
Right.
you realize they too can now see situations that might manifest in the societies, and they now have that open line of communication where they can have conversations with the school, and even sometimes pull students aside, talk to them about any aspect of school safety and just human development on a whole.
Right. And so as a principal, as a school principal, how can you assure parents, reassure parents that the school that their children attend is a safe and supportive one.
Reassurance is a funny thing. Reassurance is a funny thing. Nonetheless, we pride ourselves at the Virtuous High School in being a school that is safe. We deem ourselves or regard ourselves as a family. And families don't, let me be careful. The essence of a family is not to hurt, but rather to support.
Support, yeah.
And so we do not want our students to hurt each other. And so that is one of the things that we ensure that our students know. So if there's an incident between any two students or a group of students, then you recognize that you have them come together and then you have some conversations. Now, how does that transcend to parents knowing that we have a safe environment for their children? One, you encourage students to have those kind of conversations with their parents. Say something happens between Officer and I.
Right.
And I go home and I say, Mommy, XYZ, there was a situation between Officer and I, and this is how the teachers dealt with it. That's one way of reassuring. The next thing, again, constant communication between. You cannot put parents at the outskirts of school development and then expect them to be supportive. And so, from a school standpoint, I made it my business to ensure that I have a broadcast. There are 335 students currently enrolled at the Virtuous High School, 1st to 5th, and I have almost 300 parents on my broadcast already. And so I'm still ensuring that I get each parent's contact so that I can continue to communicate information with them. And you know, if there is, let's say, I recall I think it was my second year, because this is not the start of my 4th year as principal, I think it was my second year, there was an incident that happened at the school which required me to dismiss school early. And one of the things that I did, I jumped on my phone, I said, parents, there's a particular situation on the ground. I will have the students dismissed. At this time, I'd appreciate that you give me the space to deal with it and let us deal with it as a staff, and I will communicate more information to you as the situation is quelled. And so that is one of the things. So that line of communication is still important between student and, well, between parents and school. And then you have the simple things such as you have open days where you have parents can come in and make their observations, engage, and they can see the operations. And I don't have to pretend to put on a show when anybody is on the compound. When you come there, what you see is what you get. Right? And so those are things, and you have instances where you continue to re-echo and re-emphasize that Virtuous High School, the walls are open anytime. Come and interact. And in such, you can see what things you like, what things you think could be improved, and we all work together as a unit to ensure that we have a good and safe environment.
Great. So we are going to take a break at this time. When we come back, we are going to engage in relation to school protocols and student behavioral and mental health, as well as communication.
Okay.
And so we want to engage, we want to request of you, the listening audience, that you can weigh in during this aspect of the discussion. We will not have a segment for calling. So once you have an issue, they want to make a comment, you can just call and we will take your call. So we'll break at this time, GQ.
What you think about Marcus? Tell me what you think about Christ.
Win your share of 40K in cash and prizes this 40th Independence. Yes, you heard right. Win cash, free groceries and more. Here's how to qualify. Switch to Digicel. Activate a 3-day Prime bundle or higher. Or pay your postpaid bill in full for your chance to win your share of 40K. Visit a retail store today or activate via the My Digicel app. Digicel, better together this Independent. Promotion ends September 30th.
Enjoy your summer with the Bank of Nevis Limited. It's that time, and the bank has the perfect summer loan package for you. Take a vacation, enjoy a staycation, advance yourself academically, or prepare your children for back to school. It's your choice with up to $30,000 unsecured loan with an attractive low interest rate. Additionally, up to 5 years to repay. The Bank of Nevis Limited, improving the quality of life. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Offer ends September 30th, 2023. Bond strong.
It's time to gear up for the new school year with Digicel's exciting family postpaid plan. Get 4 Samsung's AO phone on us when you sign up today and get so much data and less calls plus international minutes with up to 4 lines, all for just $300 per month. Hurry to a retail store today. Better connected for back to school.
Welcome back, and we are back, and we are going to engage in relation to the school safety protocol. So, Mr. Thomas, does your school have a school safety team? If yes, who is on it and how it is activated and engaged?
So you asked about a school safety team. Now, one of the constructs of secondary schools, or something that should obtain, is a management team, a senior management team. And within that senior management team, what I've done was to simply use 5 pillars of school development to construct that team. So you're looking at school culture, parental and community involvement as another pillar. School culture as one pillar, management and supervision, teaching and learning, and physical plant. So within the physical plant is where you would find most of your school safety protocols. And if I'm looking here, I am seeing...
Any part of it is interdisciplinary, like in terms of discipline for persons who might be infraction with rules?
Right, so... Not necessarily, because that is more a school-based, school-wide approach. The interdisciplinary matrix, that is something I was actually going to get to. But in terms of the senior management team and its construct, the physical plant is something that is quite important. And so, again, when you look at the facets or the needs, pointing back to the first question that you asked about the needs of schools as it relates to safety, you look at electricity, power, and in keeping with the in light of the protocols, then you realize that as a unit, as a team, when we meet, and if we are discussing, let's say, physical plant and that aspect comes in, then you realize that at some point persons can be directed, or they have a mandate to ensure that the circuits or the outlets in the classes are not broken, for instance, because you understand that once live wires are exposed, then students can easily, that's going for any casualty to happen, and that is something that is hazardous. We don't want those things to happen. And so that is one of the things. So persons within that who fall under that pillar know that they have the go ahead to just go and make certain changes, of course informing the principal, make certain changes to ensure that the school is kept safe. You go back to the gate and you look at contrabands, as I said previously. Students are something as simple as an Afropick. Now, persons might not perceive an Afropick as a weapon, but you know, there are plastic Afropicks, there are metallic Afropicks. And so one of the things that students know at the school that they should not have on the compound at all is a metallic Afropick, because you understand that in any unforeseen circumstance that Afropick could be used. Now, one person could talk about a pencil, a pen, all of those stuff, but those are unavoidable. Students have to write, and so we cannot ban those things. But as it relates to the Afropick, for instance, so you understand that students, the infrastructure itself does not readily support mass searching at the gate, admittedly, because once students are at the gate, then they are kept in the open elements for a long time. And in an instance where, let's say, it's raining, then you realize you can't keep students at the gate. I know, for instance, if you look at Washington Archibald High School, when the students enter, they are automatically sheltered. So that in and of itself, that infrastructure lends itself to proper searching at that time. And so at the Virtuous High School, we have to be more crafty in that there are times when we do random searches. Like the information is communicated to the guards, or the guards might suggest, Mr. Thomas, I think we need to do X, Y, Z at this point. That time students are in the classes and they are unaware, but they are just met with the the searches, you know.
So how about threat assessment? Any protocol in relation to threat to the students, the school environment? How that is taken care of?
Threat to the school's environment as it relates to safety. I know that you are a police officer, so let's hone in a bit on violence, students' violence in schools. You have the counselors. Again, it's about mitigating things as opposed to treating them after the fact.
Right.
And so any threat as a geographer, you know, that's a potential for something to happen. It's a hazard. And so one of the things that we are quite wary of at the school is to ensure that our counselors are integral parts. So we have Miss Rosemary Gavaya. She takes care of most of the female matters, and Mr. Clive Saunders, he takes care of most of the male situations. And so they have come up with a number of programs. I can't remember all of the name of the programs, but I know there are some things where, like, some male teachers in the school adapt particular group of male students. I think it's 5M, something like that. I can't remember what the 5M mean. Okay. And there are a number of initiatives that they have implemented to ensure that students understand there are some core values that must resonate with students in order for safety to prevail or abound in any learning institution. Right. So we can sit here and we can talk a lot about students setting up this and that and that and that, but if we don't get to the core of the matters, then we understand that we are just going to raise a generation that does not value safety and human respect. And that is where especially our counselors come in. You look at mitigating threats, just normal day-to-day conversations with students. I don't like to spend an inordinate amount of time in my office. I love to interact with the students on the ground. And so there you get to understand how they think, how they interact with each other, how they interact with humans. You just find out so many things. Sometimes the students will just come and they would tell me the little boyfriend, girlfriend story. Just those little things that you put your ear in the corner.
They're comfortable with it, they feel safe, and
Mr.
Thomas, they have some level of confidence and so on.
What you feel about this one? What you think? And so it's really good, and once you can get to their level and communicate certain things to them, then you realize you have a safe you can always have a safe environment. And I am thankful, I'm quite happy that at the Virtuous High School we don't have a large number of incidences, violence and whatever, because we still pride ourselves in ensuring that our students understand certain core values.
Right. And so before we go to the student behavioral aspect, let me quickly ask, in terms of like physical security measures as a protocol and check in and check out system and so
repeat from here, please.
The physical security, the measures. You go to the school, you engage the security. What is the process of someone entering onto the premises? You check in, if their checkout system and check-in system.
Right. So there are checkout and check-in systems. There are certain shortfalls that exist in schools. One of the things, for instance, that I would love from the security standpoint to the office of the principal is for a line of, apart from the personal cellular phone, is that I think they call it more like an intercom. Right, so those systems I think are quite essential in establishing or helping to secure a safer environment in schools, they are quicker. Quicker means of communication. You know, sometimes when you are on your cellular phone, you have to punch in a number, you have to search for a contact. But with let's say a walkie-talkie, I mean, a lot of children our age might not readily know about them, but you simply press a button over and out, XYZ, blah blah blah. And so those things I think are quite essential. So we have certain restrictions. There are certain infrastructural changes that could be done,
Right.
that are not there, certain resources that we wish could be there. And so from the security guards hut right at the gate to the principal's office, which is roughly 30 meters away, 30 to 40 meters away from the security guard hut, we wish that anybody who's coming to the compound, that some sort of communication be made right from the office straight to there. But if you look at what exists now, you have persons coming to the gate. There are times when the security guards themselves, they would call me and they would say, Mr. Thomas, XYZ parent is here. If there's let's say a parent is not appropriately dressed, Mr. Thomas, this parent is here. He or she is not appropriately dressed. Miss Glasgow, Mr. Fleming, you know what the school stands for. Persons must dress appropriately to come onto the compound. And so there are lines of communication in terms of that. There we have visitors book, where persons, just like when you go to government headquarters, you have persons signing in and signing out, stating their reason for visit and stuff like that. So there should be no loitering of guests on the school's compound. The security guards know that. Sometimes they might be asked to remove somebody, just in rare instances, if you have somebody misbehaving. If, let's say, a parent wants to behave a particular way and is not conducive for the school environment, then you recognize that they too would not necessarily physically remove the persons, but order the persons to be removed. Once anything goes beyond their control at the gate, the police station, which is right down the road at the base of the road, then matters could and would be relayed to them.
Yeah, we are losing our time, so then let me just in terms of from the student behavioral aspect and the communication, we'll take that in about 1 minute because we still have the other part to go in relation to that. So what are some of the challenges, if there is any, in relation to student behavioral challenge or mental health? If
students are coming from a wide array of situations at home, and you realize that a lot of the behaviors are manifested in the school perimeters. Nonetheless, as a responsible administration, it is important that we help students along the continuum in terms of becoming better citizens all around. You have students who are exhibiting certain behaviors within the community. They are misusing certain drugs or certain substances, rather, to be politically correct. They are misusing certain substances, and some behaviors might not be favorable for the school's environment. As a school, how do you respond? You ensure that students are given clear guidelines. I recall my first year being a principal, 28 years old, and there was a high incidence of marijuana use among the young men. And to some degree, some of them felt like it was just okay to whether come to school high. I am of the view, this is just my view, I am of the view that once anything is misused, then it clouds your judgment. I am also of the view that if you look at marijuana, for instance, that the physiological development of any child is not, or the stage at which any child is physiologically, is not ready, quote unquote, for the type of marijuana usage or dosage that some students would use. And so,
and when they come with the antisocial and some of the challenges and so on.
And so there came a point when we recognize in some instances they are gone, but in some instances you could not control or stop some students from using marijuana. And so, okay, you do what you have to do, but there are clear guidelines as it relates to the operations at this learning institution. So when you come into the perimeters of the Virtuous High School, you shouldn't be in possession of any illegal substance, be it alcohol, marijuana, whatever you want to call it. You should not be reeking the scent of any of the substances. Because to my mind and to our minds at this school who are trying to lead you, we cannot trust your judgment if you are under the influence of any of these.
But now that it is decriminalized in some aspect, how the school is really
same stance, zero tolerance.
Okay.
Zero tolerance.
So if they have out of school, well, really and truly, children should not be consuming marijuana, but we know the reality and so on and things like that in relation to that. But I think that it is important to have a zero tolerance from a school perspective.
There's still scope in the law, in the Education Act, that speaks to schools establishing their guidelines and their rules as well. And so as a principal, as a responsible school administration, again, it's about mitigating these things rather than reacting to them after the fact.
And quickly before we, because I want to share some tips so our parents will get involved and do a little quick assessment in terms of some of these protocol, how you rate them and so on. But before that, in terms of communication from the aspect of reporting, do you have a policy of anonymous reporting? And in addition to that, how parents are informed with incidents at the school level?
When you speak to anonymous reporting,
like a student is aware of have information, and how does that student go about bringing that information to the authority
without being identified as the source?
Yes.
Okay, good. So one of the things, first of all, there are certain aspects of student behavior that as a principal that I am not encouraged to get involved in, because certain matters are beyond me. There are certain entities, certain organizations, certain bodies beyond me that deal with certain things. And so once information comes, especially when it is life-threatening, then those matters cannot be concealed. You have situations where, let's say a child is being, I don't like to say abused, but let's say abused. Let's just use the word abused loosely. A child is being abused at home. Then you recognize that that child's life might be endangered depending on how it's endangered to begin with, but depending on how the situation is handled, then that child could become further endangered. And so you have to create an environment, a space where children understand that it's okay to speak, but you as an administration, you are the responsible adult in the situation, must recognize that the child's identity must be protected at all costs. And we have had multiple situations where students have and are now comfortable bringing matters to the fore. And even in terms of the reporting, let's say we have to relay a case to higher authorities, you might fill the form with the incident, but the child's name is not even pinned to the form. So the matter is dealt with discreetly rather than endangering the child. And it's all about being crafty and knowing how to deal with particular matters. Even if, let's say, you steal my pen in the classroom and a child does not necessarily want to be identified as the classroom rat, quote unquote. And so you have to create those environments. I think you have hotlines in, well, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but in the police force in and of itself, you have hotlines. Where people can call and not be identified and whatever. And so you try to create those systems on a micro level in the school, and I think students are quite comfortable doing that because they might not necessarily want to speak aloud, but once they have information, and that's in part how we resolve a number of issues in the school as well, where persons might come after the fact and say, Mr. Thomas, I didn't want to say it, but this is the case and this is the case. And now, as a strategist, when you approach the situation, you approach it as if you don't know what's going on, you are not revealing the character's name, but you deal with the core matter, and you get the issues resolved.
Right. So we are at the point that I call taking action, and this is really for our listening audience, the parents of students and so on. And so, in case you might be wondering, well, what you can do to be a part of the solution. Quickly, I will say that first, as a parent, you get in the know, right? And by that I mean that you try to inquire, you ask questions as to what policies are there and things that are absent, that this is an opportunity that parents can get involved through the PTA, and they can become active participants in the whole issue of school safety. And this provides in and of itself an opportunity for connection, an expansion in terms of a networking, and it brings me back to where I would have said, how can the community become part of that supportive initiative? And I think this is where the parents and other members of the community can get involved.
It's an all-inclusive
And so
approach.
you would encourage parents and other persons to do things like that, correct?
Parents, guardians, all of the stakeholders, they're all important.
Right, very good. And so before we go, I want to do a quick, what I call a security safety analysis or assessment in relation to the school. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to tell me, where does it fall, whether it fall below 50%,
Okay.
or above 50 to 100%, right?
Okay.
And that is how you'll be able to think. So the first one is control access to buildings during school hours. Where you place that?
As in an outsider coming in?
Coming in to the school and so on. Because you talk about, remember, sometimes it cannot only be accessed through the physical security. So in terms of a school environment, control access during school hours. Can someone enter into the school without going through the security, and at what percentage that vulnerability, please?
Okay, so if you look at
Remember, we all the time.
Oh,
So can't
sorry.
explain
Yeah.
that. Just give me
Oh,
the
sorry.
percentage. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
I would say above acceptable, except just on the western wall, it is lower. It is lower, and so what you have is that the security guards have to do certain patrols, but we don't have the
Percentage. How
Above
rated?
50.
Above 50.
Yeah, you asked me to give you ranges.
Above 50 between 100, right? But that up the upper range of 50.
No, but
Right.
above 50.
Right. Security cameras to
Oh,
use to
definitely
monitor.
below zero.
Below zero.
Yes.
Okay.
And you realize it's below zero.
Yeah. Required faculty staff to wear badge picture IDs. Do your staff
No, we don't.
for
So-
identification?
No, we don't. That's not something that's mandated.
Okay. How you feel about it?
I'm not too certain.
Because I supposed to know who is a teacher
Mm-hmm.
at Virtual High School, who is a student.
And that's a
And,
salient point.
yes.
Nonetheless, it's not something that is. It could be explored, but it's not something that is mandated from the ministry standpoint. Even
Okay.
as relates to principal, I know some of us might have IDs, but I know the students are required to have IDs. So,
Right.
So
Okay.
if I would put that between 25 and 50, I'm creating my own.
Okay. All
my
right.
own range.
Random sweeps for contrabands.
That I would carry that above 50, but not necessarily at 100.
All right. Requiring students to wear uniform.
Well, just this
In
morning,
other words, students have to wear. They must wear uniform.
there are extenuating circumstances that we allow ourselves to be flexible, but that is very close to 100.
Okay. All right. Requiring students to wear badges and IDs.
That is something that is, I would say 50% at the moment, because there are some things beyond our control that we cannot enforce it, but it's something that in the past that we have required students to have.
I think at Kian High School, that you have to wear a badge when you're leaving the school. I think I'm not certain of it, but working at Cairn Police Station as a sergeant, I thought that was part of the policy.
Yeah, it is a part. Even as it relates to the Farm 1 students who just enrolled, the parents have been quite responsive to the idea, and they have already paid for their students' ID. So it's something that is a part of us.
Right.
Nonetheless, as I said, there are some things beyond our control that at this point we can't really just...
Right. Random metal detector checks?
No, we don't.
No? So that's a zero?
We actually have...
When
we
I
actually
ask you
have
these
some.
things, I want you as the principal to think about them and see if they are necessary to consider
Yeah,
in
that-
terms of improvement.
Yeah, those things are always necessary, but
Yeah.
they are not things that form readily a part of the school safety
Yeah.
protocol measures, the physical
Okay.
protocol measures.
And finally, school safety resource officers. Whether the school have a safety officer or it has a police officer that is attached to the school as a resource officer.
One of the things that I can say, well, you asked me to rate it first.
Yes.
I like to talk a lot. I would say that
The
is,
other time.
in terms of the personnel, that is above 75. Not 100%, I'm not going to give anything 100%, but above 75. We have been buffered quite a bit by the old road police officers. They make regular visits to the schools and ensure that things are in place. Most times things are in place, and so they are quite resourceful. And then as it relates to the staff, we have teachers as well who help to bolster school safety.
Okay, so I want to thank you, Mr. Thomas. I know your schedule is very busy.
Yes,
I am
it
really happy that you find the time
Uh-huh.
to come. You have really been very much enlightening.
Yes.
I'm sure that the general public now have a great understanding of how the virtual high school is being administered, and I'm really impressed. And I think you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank ZIZ for giving us the extra time we have over. But you have 30 seconds to do your wrap up before I say my final thank you.
30 seconds. During my presentation, I said that school safety is an all-inclusive thing, and so be it Virtual High School, Bastia High School, Charles E. Mills, Sadler Secondary, Cairn High School, Washington Archibald High School,
Right.
ICCS, and the primary schools, preschools. We have to remember that as a society, our community, it's our responsibility to help our students along the continuum in terms of becoming better citizens. It's an all-inclusive approach. Remember that schools are only microcosms of society,
Right.
and whatever behaviors manifest in schools would also manifest within our communities and vice versa. So please help us to help our students.
Right, and thank you so much, our listeners. We really were hoping to have some kind of interaction from the listening public, but I think that the information was preferred to be had than to disrupt it. And that's how I see it.
No problem.
But I really want to thank our regular listeners, home and abroad, and I also thank the staff of ZIZ. Until next week, for another policing with you. Good morning.
Thank you.